If I asked you right now to close your eyes and picture a healthy woman, what would you see? Don't overthink it. Just notice the first picture that came into your mind. What does she look like? Is she thin, toned? Maybe she's wearing workout clothes. Maybe she's running before sunrise or walking out of Pilates class carrying one of those enormous water bottles. Maybe she's standing in a perfectly organized kitchen making a green smoothie at 5:30 in the morning. After she's already worked out, meditated, journaled, drank 32 ounces of lemon water, and somehow got 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep. And good for her, by the way. I would like to meet her and find out what time she goes to bed. But isn't it interesting? I asked you to picture a healthy woman, and the first thing you pictured with pretty good chance is what she looks like. I think we've been taught to do that. For a very long time, I did too. I thought healthy had a look, a size, a weight, a certain amount of muscle definition. I thought the healthier I became, the closer I would get to looking like the woman I pictured. The woman that I thought represented health. But today, I believe something very different. In fact, I believe I am a healthier woman today than I was 10, 5, or even 2 years ago. And I'm not saying that because I finally reached some perfect weight, because obviously I have not. I'm saying it because I am more in tune with my body than I probably ever have been before. I understand it better. I nourish it differently. I have more peace. I have more confidence in myself. I learn when I need to push myself and when I need to rest. I'm learning that my physical health, mental health, emotional health, and spiritual health aren't separate little compartments. They're all part of me, and they're all important. And when those things begin working together, I think that's where we really start getting much closer to what healthy really is. So today, I want to challenge the picture that popped up into your head a few minutes ago, because maybe, just maybe, we've been measuring healthy women by the wrong things. Let's talk about it.
Scream it out and say you're worth it, though you feel you're not worth it.
Welcome back to the Nourish with Regina podcast, where we're talking about transforming your plate and transforming your life. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Regina, a wife, mom of 4 adult children, certified nutrition coach, and a woman who is still learning how to nourish her own body, mind, and spirit right alongside you. And today's episode is going to be a little bit different. This isn't one I necessarily just want you to listen to and move on with your day. I want you to participate in this one with me. So if you can, find yourself a quiet place, grab a cup of coffee or tea, get comfortable, and bring a notebook and pen. We're going to have a little activity later. We're going to do something together later on in this episode, and I really want to give yourself permission to slow down and to think about your answers. And if you're driving right now, please don't grab a notebook. Keep your hands on the wheel. But if you're walking, working out, folding laundry, making dinner, I know I do a lot of those things while I listen to podcasts. Whatever you're doing, just keep listening. You can always come back to that part later on when you have a few quiet minutes. Because I'm going to ask you to picture something today. Not your goal weight, not your goal size, not the body that you had at 25. I want us to begin creating the picture of the healthy woman that you're becoming. What does she feel like? How does she live? How does she care for herself? What does her relationship with food look like? How does she speak to herself? What does she protect and prioritize? What does she believe about herself? And here's what I want you to hear before we go any further. This isn't just another assignment designed to show you all the ways you're falling short. It's quite the opposite. I don't want you finishing the episode with 15 more things that you think you should be doing, right? I want you to finish feeling relieved, empowered, inspired, and maybe seeing yourself a little differently. Because healthy women aren't women who always make the perfect choice. They're not women who never miss a workout, never eat dessert, never get stressed, and somehow remember to drink all their water every single day. Healthy women are human. And I think one of the biggest differences is that over time, they learn how to make choices that support the woman they're becoming. And they learn how to come back when they don't. So today, we're going to talk about some of the messages we've been given about health, especially as women. We're going to talk about diet culture, social media, comparison, food, boundaries, our minds, our bodies, our spiritual health. And yes, we're going to look into some science too, because you know me. I don't just want to sit here and give you my opinion, right? I want you to understand why some of these things matter. But more than anything, I want today's conversation to help you answer a question. Who is the healthy woman I am becoming? Because once you know her, there's another question you can start asking in ordinary moments of your life. And that question is the choice, the woman, is this a choice that the woman I am becoming would make? Not the woman on Instagram, not your neighbor, not your sister, not the you of 25 years ago. You, the woman God uniquely created you to be. And I have a feeling by the end of today's episode, she may feel a whole lot closer than you think. So let's start by talking how we got such a distorted picture of her in the first place, the healthy woman from the beginning. How did we get here? How did so many of us end up believing that we could tell whether a woman was healthy simply by looking at her? Honestly, I think some of it started long before Instagram ever existed. I grew up in a generation of women who were constantly being told what we should and shouldn't eat, and the rules changed all the time. Remember when fat was basically the enemy and everything was low fat? Fat-free yogurt, fat-free cookies, fat-free salad dressing, and somehow we were all eating those little fat-free cookies thinking, this is healthy. Then it was carbs. Carbs were the problem, right? Suddenly bread was practically a character flaw. Then eggs were bad because they contained cholesterol. Butter was bad. Red meat was bad. Then somebody decided butter was back. Eggs came back. Avocados became superstars. Breakfast was the most important meal of the day until intermittent fasting came along, right? And then suddenly breakfast was apparently optional. And depending on which corner of social media you happen to land on today, fruit has too much sugar. Oatmeal is going to spike your blood sugar. Seed oils are supposedly poisoning everybody. And somebody, somewhere, is probably trying to convince you that the tomato on your salad is trying to kill you. It's exhausting. And I don't say that to make fun of nutrition science, because nutrition science does evolve. That's what science is supposed to do. We study something, we learn more about it, we gather better evidence, we add nuance. Sometimes recommendations change. That's not necessarily evidence that science can't be trusted. Sometimes it's evidence that we're learning things. The problem comes when a complicated piece of nutrition research gets turned into 5-second headlines, right? Eggs are bad. Eggs are good. Carbs make you fat. Fat makes you fat. Never eat this food. Eat this food every day. And pretty soon, we aren't eating anymore. We're taking a nutrition exam 3 times a day. And women have been taking that exam for decades. I think about a woman I know that still will not eat red meat or limits it very, very much because somewhere along the way she learned red meat raises cholesterol. And once some of those messages get planted, they're very hard to pull back out. But here's where nutrition science has become much more nuanced. Take eggs. For years, eggs were treated almost like little cholesterol bombs. But today, cardiovascular guidance doesn't simply tell every healthy person to eliminate eggs because they contain dietary cholesterol. The American Heart Association emphasizes the overall dietary pattern, particularly things like saturated fat, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats, and quality protein sources. For healthy people, an egg can absolutely fit into a heart-healthy eating pattern. Same as red meat. Not every day, not all the time, but there is a place for it in a healthy diet. There are also additional considerations for people with certain health conditions or cholesterol disorders, which is exactly my point. Context matters. Just because it's bad for some people doesn't mean it's bad for everybody, right? Your whole diet matters. You matter. Going back to the red meat example, the answer isn't red meat is poison, don't ever eat it. And it's also not eat as much red meat as you want because saturated fat doesn't matter. Neither extreme is particularly helpful, right? Many cuts of red meat contain more saturated fat than fish, poultry, or plant proteins. And saturated fat can raise LDL cholesterol. So the amount matters, right? The cut you choose matters. What else you're eating with it matters. Your individual cardiovascular risk matters. So the American Heart Association still recommends emphasizing lean meat and minimally processed proteins. They recommend you limit your saturated fats, which is very different from you ate steak and your cholesterol is doomed forever, right? So nutrition rarely fits into those neat little boxes that we want it to. And maybe that's one of the first things healthy women eventually learned is we don't need another absolute. We need understanding. We need knowledge. We need to learn the truth about food and how it nourishes our body. But then social media entered the picture. And now we just don't have nutrition rules. We have a front row seat to everybody else's body, everybody else's breakfast, everybody else's workout, everybody else's morning routine, everybody else's what I eat in a day. And friends, comparison is the thief of joy. And it's a terrible health assessment tool because you cannot look at another woman's body and know whether she is healthy. You don't know her blood pressure, her blood sugar, her cholesterol. You don't know whether she's strong. You don't know whether she's sleeping as much as she should, or if she has energy that lasts throughout the day. You don't know what her relationship with food is. You don't know what medication she's taking. You don't know what she's struggling with mentally or emotionally. You don't know whether the body you're comparing yourself to is genetically natural for her, or whether maintaining it is taking every ounce of her physical and emotional energy. You just don't know. You can't tell those things by looking at someone. So stop comparing yourself to the people online. Research actually is beginning to show us that this constant online comparison can be harmful. Studies looking at social media comparison have found meaningful associations with greater body image concerns, more eating disorder symptoms, and lower body positivity. Think about that, especially for our young girls. We're spending hours looking at other people's bodies and then wondering why we feel worse about ourselves. Right? And I'm not standing here pointing fingers at social media. I'm on social media. Obviously, I use it for my business. There are wonderful educators there. There are communities that encourage people. I've learned things online. I've connected with people on social media. So social media isn't automatically bad, but we have to become better consumers of it because the algorithm doesn't necessarily know what's good for your mind. It knows what keeps your thumb moving. And if every time you open your phone, you're seeing women with bodies that make you feel inadequate, meals that make your lunch feel inadequate, morning routines that make your life feel inadequate, maybe protecting your health means paying attention to what you're allowing into your mind. Because here's something I want you to remember. You are the only you ever made anywhere. There isn't another woman on this planet with your exact genetics, your exact life experiences, your exact family, your exact hormones, your exact history, your exact gifts, your exact calling. And as a woman of faith, I believe that's intentional. Scripture tells us that we are made in the image and likeness of God. So why would good stewardship of my body require me to make it look like somebody else's? It doesn't. And I think that's one of the biggest shifts in my own health journey. I used to look outward for the standard. Well, what does she weigh? What size is she? What is she eating? What workout is she doing? And now I'm looking inward. I'm asking, how is my body functioning? How is my energy? How is my sleep? How do I feel mentally and emotionally? Am I getting stronger? Am I nourishing myself? Am I at peace? Am I caring for my spiritual health? And I'm able to show up for the life God has given me. Those questions tell me so much more about my health than whether my body looks like some woman I don't know. And with AI now, who knows if she's even real or not, on my Instagram feed. Also, none of those things determine your worth. If you exercise today, you're not more worthy. If you ate vegetables at lunch, you're not more worthy. If you lost 5 pounds, you're not more worthy. And if today was hard, if you ate at the drive-through dinner, if you didn't work out, if you're exhausted, if your body isn't responding the way you'd hoped it would, you are not less worthy. Your worth was established long before you ever made your first health decision. You were made in the image and likeness of God. Health is not how we earn our worth. It's one of the ways we care for the life we've already been given and how we're good stewards of it, but it does not determine our worth. And I think once we understand that, we can finally stop trying to become somebody else's version of healthy. Which brings me back to the woman I asked you to picture at the beginning of this episode, because now I don't want you to picture her anymore. I want you to start picturing you. Not who you were 20 years ago or who you were at your skinniest. Not some perfect version of yourself. The woman you are becoming. So if you grabbed that notebook earlier and you have time to sit and do this with me, it's going to be a great exercise. And like I said, if you can't, come back to it later. But I want you to open your notebook because we are going to meet her. Okay? We're going to slow things down a little bit here. If you have that notebook, go ahead, open it up, get your pen ready, and just take a few deep breaths in. Calm your mind. If you're somewhere where you can't write right now, that's okay. Just listen. You can come back to this later again. And before we start, I want to make something really clear. The woman we're about to imagine is not another woman you have to live up to. We're not creating a new standard for you to fail. We're not building perfect future you, because she'd probably be just as exhausting as the woman we talked about at the beginning of the episode. This isn't about perfection. It's about direction. I want you to think about the woman you are becoming, so that when you're standing in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday trying to decide what you need, you know which direction you want to move. So let's meet her. I'm actually going to do this with you because I'm still becoming her too. So first, I don't want you to picture what she looks like. I know that's probably where our brains immediately want to go. Don't worry. Don't worry about her weight. Don't worry what she looks like. Don't worry if her muscles are toned or not yet. Don't give her a clothing side. Don't decide whether she has abs. For just a minute, I want you to forget what her body looks like entirely. Instead, picture yourself waking up 5 years from now, maybe even 10. You open your eyes in the morning and you feel well. You feel good. Not perfect. Not 25 again. Just good. What does that feel like? Maybe you have more energy. Maybe your body feels strong. Maybe you slept really good and you feel rested. Maybe you aren't waking up immediately thinking about everything that's wrong with you. Maybe there's just peace. Now I want you to write down whatever came to you. There's no right answer. This is your healthy self. Now imagine her getting out of bed and moving through her day. What do you want her body to be able to do? Not what do you want it to look like. What do you want it to do? Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to walk through a new city with your husband or your family or your kids and not spend the whole time wondering whether your body can keep up. Maybe you want to carry your own suitcase because you want to travel alone. Maybe you want to be able to cook and stand in the kitchen for a few hours. Maybe you want to get down on the floor with your grandchildren and really get back up again. Those are the things that matter to me. Your answer may be completely different. Maybe you want to garden. Maybe you want to hike. Maybe you simply want enough energy left at the end of the workday to enjoy your family. Don't choose something because it sounds impressive. Choose something because it matters to you. So go ahead and write down. You're doing great. Now, let's leave her body for a minute. I want you to notice something else about this woman. How does she talk to herself? She has hard days. Because 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're still going to have hard days. She looks in the mirror and maybe doesn't love everything she sees. But what does she say? Does she tear herself apart? Does she immediately start making promises about what she's going to stop eating tomorrow? Or has she learned to speak to herself with a little more grace? What would you like that voice inside your head to sound like? Write that down. Maybe it's only one sentence. Now I want you to sit down and eat with your future self. What food does she do, what does food feel like in her life? Not what does she eat? I'm not asking that. What does her relationship with food feel like? Does she trust herself around it? Can she choose foods that nourish her body without feeling like she's constantly following rules? Can she sit at a birthday dinner and enjoy the cake without mentally calculating how she's going to make up for it tomorrow? Can she recognize when she's actually hungry? And can she recognize when she's satisfied? Can food be nourishment to her and also celebration and connection? And sometimes just something delicious that she really enjoys. What would peace with food look like for you? Take a second with that. Now, I want you to think beyond food completely, okay? Because we've already said that healthy isn't only physical, right? What does life feel like for this woman, your future self? Is she constantly rushing? Is she saying yes when every part of her wants to say no? Is she giving everyone else whatever is left of her and then wondering why there's nothing left for herself? Or has she learned that boundaries aren't selfish? Maybe she's learning that protecting her peace is part of protecting her health. Maybe she understands that she doesn't have to be available to everybody all the time. Maybe she's finally learned that rest isn't something she has to earn. What would you protect if you truly believed your well-being mattered too? And now, one more place I want us to go. What does the spiritual life of this woman look like? Not what you think it should look like. What would help you feel rooted, connected, at peace? Maybe future you starts her morning in prayer. Maybe she reads scripture. Maybe she spends more time outside noticing God's creation. Maybe she has women in her life who encourage her faith. Maybe she's simply gotten better at being still long enough to listen. For me, nourishing my spirit has become just as important as nourishing my body because I can eat all the protein, drink all the water, do all the strength training, and still be completely depleted if I'm ignoring this part of myself. So, what does your spirit need? Write that down too. Now, I want you to look at what you've written. And if you need more time to write or to contemplate on these things, you can pause it between each question. And when you're ready to move on with the next one, just hit play and keep going. But I want you to look at what you've written. I don't want you to analyze it. I just want you to look at it and sit with it. And I want you to notice something. I didn't ask you what she weighs. I never asked you what size jeans she wears. I never asked if she had cellulite or how many calories a day she eats. And yet, I'm hoping you have a much clearer picture of your healthy self than you did 10 minutes ago. Because she is not defined by a body size. She's defined by the way she lives, the way she cares for herself, the way she speaks to herself, the things she protects, the relationships she nurtures, the way she nourishes her body, the way she nourishes her mind and her spirit. And here's the part I really want you to hear. She's not waiting for you 5 years from now. She's already here. Not completely, not perfectly, but every time you make a choice that moves you toward the life you just described, you're becoming her. And that brings us to the question I've started asking myself. It's incredibly simple, but sometimes simple questions can change the way we make our decisions. When I'm standing at a crossroads, even a really small one, I can ask myself, is this a choice the woman I am becoming would make? Please don't turn that question into another weapon against yourself. Future Regina isn't standing over current Regina with her arms crossed saying, really? That's what you're eating? No, that's not her. Because the woman I want to become has more grace than that. Sometimes the answer might be, yes, she would get up and move her body this morning, even though she doesn't really feel like it. And sometimes the answer would be, yes, she would turn off the alarm and sleep another hour because her body genuinely needs rest. Sometimes she chooses the salmon and vegetables because she knows she'll feel good afterwards. And sometimes she eats the birthday cake because she's sitting at a table celebrating someone she deeply loves. So the question isn't what is the perfect choice? It's what choice supports the life I'm trying to build. And here's what I love most about that. You don't have to become her today. You don't have to overhaul your entire life this week. You don't have to get every choice exactly right. You just need opportunities to practice becoming her, one decision at a time. Because your healthy self isn't some woman waiting for you at the end of a weight loss journey. She's already being formed by the choices you're making now, today, this week. And now I want to tell you something really fascinating about your brain, because this idea of becoming her isn't just motivational. There's actually science behind the way repeated choices begin to change what feels natural to us. So I want to go back to something I just said, because I think it's one of the most hopeful things we're going to talk about today. And I said that you don't have to become that woman overnight. You simply need opportunities to practice becoming her. And maybe you're thinking, okay, Regina, that sounds nice, but why does making the healthier choice still feel hard sometimes? And that's a really good question. Because sometimes we're a little unfair to ourselves about this. We decide we're going to start exercising in the morning, and the alarm goes off at 6 or 5. And every cell in our body is apparently united in opposition. Or we decide we're going to start planning lunches instead of grabbing whatever's available. And for the first week, it feels like one more thing we have to do. We have to remember, we have to think about, we have to plan it, we have to make ourselves do it. And we look at someone who's been doing this for years and think, why does it seem so easy for her and so hard for me? Well, maybe it wasn't easy for her at first either. Maybe she simply practiced it longer. And this is where your brain becomes absolutely fascinating. Your brain is not a static organ. It can change in response to experience. We call that neuroplasticity. Now, sometimes that word gets thrown around online as if we can just think really positive thoughts and completely rewire our brains by Tuesday. That's not exactly what I'm talking about here. Neuroplasticity simply refers to the nervous system's ability to change its activity and connections in response to experience. And learning is one of the ways that happens. Think about something you do now without really thinking about it. Driving is a great example, right? Remember learning to drive? You had to think about everything. Where are my hands? Check the mirrors, check the speed, turn signal. How close am I to that car? Am I inside the lines? Why is my dad holding on to the door handle like that? It required so much attention. But now you get in your car and you drive somewhere you've driven 100 times. And sometimes you arrive and think, wow, I barely remember driving here. That's not because your brain stopped working. It's because your brain became efficient. What once required enormous conscious effort became much more automatic with practice. Our habits can work in similar ways. Researchers who study habits have found that behaviors we initially perform deliberately can, with repetition and stable cues, become more automatically triggered by the situations around us. And there are brain systems, including parts of the basal ganglia, that are deeply involved in that kind of habit learning, which means when something feels awkward or effortful at first, that doesn't necessarily mean you're bad at it. It simply means it's new. So if you want to start meal planning and your first week is a disaster and everything tastes gross and you just are so frustrated, don't give up because it's new. You're learning still. I want you to hear that. Because how many times have we tried something for a week, maybe two, and thought, this isn't just me? Maybe it isn't you yet. So there's a study about habit formation that gets talked about a lot because people love asking how many days does it take to form a habit, right? So for years, we've heard 21 days. It takes 21 days, then 66 days. And somehow we keep trying to find this magical number where we wake up and suddenly don't have to think anymore. But real life isn't that neat. We know that. Different behaviors take different amounts of time to become more automatic. Different people take different amounts of time. And missing one opportunity doesn't magically erase all the learning that came before it. That's the part I wish more people understood. Because if you miss your walk on Wednesday, your brain doesn't hold an emergency meeting and announce, well, apparently we're just not walking anymore ever again. You just walk on Thursday. That's why consistency matters so much more to me than perfection. Every repetition gives your brain another experience of, oh, this is something we just do. Maybe after dinner, we walk. Maybe when I make breakfast, I include a source of protein. Maybe when I pour my morning coffee, I fill my water bottle too. Maybe Sunday afternoon is when I look at the week ahead and decide what we're eating. Not because any of those things are magical, but because we're reducing how many times we have to negotiate with ourselves. And I think that's one of the things we misunderstand about healthy people. We assume they're constantly making better decisions because they have incredible willpower. But often they've simply created patterns. They've arranged part of their life so the choice they want to make is easier to repeat. They don't wake up every morning and hold a congressional hearing about whether they're going to brush their teeth. You just brush your teeth. It's part of your life. It's part of your routine. It's part of your day. And over time, Some of our health behaviors can begin feeling more like that too. Not effortless all the time, not automatic in every situation. We're still human, but familiar and normal. Ours. And this is where I want you to think back to the woman you just described in your notebook. Maybe you wrote that she is stronger. Don't ask, how do I become strong? That's enormous. Ask, what's one behavior she probably repeats? Maybe she strength trains twice a week. Okay. That's something you can practice. Maybe future you has more peace around food. You don't have to solve your entire relationship with food tomorrow. Maybe you start practicing eating lunch without scrolling through your phone. And actually notice whether you're hungry, satisfied, and enjoying what you're eating. Maybe future you feels more connected to God. You don't suddenly have to spend an hour every morning in prayer. Maybe tomorrow, before you pick up your phone, you spend 5 quiet minutes with Him. Small does not mean insignificant, because you're not trying to prove anything with one choice. You're practicing a pattern. And every time you practice it, it becomes a little more familiar, a little easier. But here's where this gets even more interesting, because eventually something can begin to shift beyond the behavior itself. At first, you might say, I'm trying to start exercising. And then one day, without really noticing when it happened, you start saying, I'm someone who moves their body. At first, I'm trying to eat healthier. Eventually, I'm someone who nourishes herself. At first, I'm trying to make time for prayer. Eventually, my relationship with God is something I protect. Do you hear the difference? The behaviors start becoming connected to the way you see yourself. And that's kind of what I was trying to do with our exercise earlier in the episode. Researchers are increasingly interested in the relationship between habit and identity. So a recent meta-analysis of health behaviors found a strong positive association between the two. That doesn't prove that identity simply causes habits or that habits create identity. The relationship appears a lot more intertwined than that. And I think that's fascinating, because maybe while you're practicing the habit is also helping shape the story you tell about yourself and who you are. But there is a danger here, because if we aren't careful, we can take this beautiful idea of an identity and turn that into another standard we're failing to meet. So, I mean, we can say to ourselves, well, if I were really a healthy woman, I wouldn't have eaten that. If I were really disciplined, I wouldn't have skipped my workout. Future me wouldn't have done this. No, we're not going there. Okay? Because becoming a healthy woman isn't only about what you do when you get it right. I think one of the most important differences might actually be what you believe about yourself when you don't. And that's where I want us to go next. So let's stay with that for a minute, because I think this is where the idea of the woman I'm becoming can either become incredibly powerful, or if we're not careful, it can become another way to beat ourselves up. Remember the woman you pictured earlier, the healthy version of you in 5 years? I don't ever want her to become another woman you're comparing yourself to, even if that woman is you. Because comparison can sneak in anywhere. We've already talked about comparing ourselves to the women on Instagram, but sometimes I think we're even harder on ourselves when we compare ourselves to some version that we think we should be. I should be further along by now. I should have lost more weight by now. I should be more disciplined. I know better than this. Or maybe I used to be able to do this. Why can't I do it now? And suddenly future you isn't encouraging you forward anymore. She's standing at the finish line judging you because you haven't gotten there yet. And I don't want that for you because I don't think that's healthy either. I've spent enough years of my own life believing that if I could just be hard enough on myself, I would finally change. Maybe you know that voice too. The one that says, come on, Regina, get it together. You know better. You blew it again. You haven't lost any weight this week. That's a total failure. And somehow we convince ourselves that that voice is helping. We call it accountability. We call it discipline. But sometimes it's just shame wearing workout clothes. And here's something I find fascinating. Being kinder to ourselves does not appear to make us less motivated. Researchers have actually studied this, and I love this one. In one series of experiments, people who responded to a failure or weakness with self-compassion showed greater motivation to improve afterwards, not less. In one of the experiments, students who had experienced a poor test result spent more time studying after being encouraged to respond to themselves compassionately. Think about that. Because we've been taught almost the opposite, right? We have somehow gotten this idea that if we're kind to ourselves after making a mistake, that we're saying, oh, well, who cares? But that's not self-compassion. Self-compassion isn't pretending the choice didn't matter. It's being able to say, okay, that wasn't the best choice I wanted to make. What happened? How can I learn from it? And what do I want to do next? There's accountability there. It just doesn't require humiliation. And I think that's really important in health because you're going to miss the workout. You're going to have a day where you don't feel well or you're tired or you just can't fit it in your schedule because it's one more mental exhaustion thing. You're going to have a week where you eat out more than you had wanted to. You're going to stay up too late sometimes. You're going to get stressed and fall back into an old pattern you thought you had conquered. I am too, because we're not trying to become robots. We're trying to become healthier human beings. And research looking across dozens of studies has found that self-compassion is positively associated with health-promoting behavior. That doesn't mean self-compassion magically causes every healthy behavior. But it does challenge this idea that we have to hate ourselves into taking better care of ourselves. I don't think we do. In fact, I think we take care of things better when we value them, when we love them, when they're important to us. Think about that. When something is precious to you, you care for it, you protect it, you love it. You don't care of it because you despise it, right? You care because it matters to you. So what if we begin thinking about our bodies that way? Not, I'll love my body when I lose the weight. I'll love my body when I can fit in a size 6 pair of jeans. Not, I'll be proud of myself when I finally get healthy. But this body I have matters now. Today, before the weight changes, before the lab work changes, before you get stronger, before you fix anything. The body you have matters today. And this is where my faith completely changes this conversation for me because my worth cannot be something I earn through good, healthy behavior. If I believe what my faith teaches me, that I am created in the image and likeness of God, then my worth existed before I ever ate a vegetable or walked on a treadmill or lifted weights or drank enough water. I didn't become more valuable because I worked out. God doesn't love me more because I hit my protein goal. I don't become holier because I ordered the salad, right? I'm not less worthy because I had French fries. Sometimes you need a good French fry. Not a ton, not every day, but sometimes, right? Those choices can affect my health. Of course they can. That's why we're having this conversation. But they don't determine my worth. Those are two very different things. And I think sometimes, especially as women, we've mixed them together. We lose weight and people tell us how amazing we look. We gain weight and suddenly nobody says anything. We fit into the smaller jeans and feel successful. The jeans get tight and we feel like we failed. And somewhere along the way, the condition of our body starts feeling like a report card on the condition of us. My body isn't a report card, and neither is yours. My body is something I've been entrusted with. And that word stewardship has become so important to me because stewardship feels very different from punishment. If my body is a gift, then I want to care for it. I want to feed it nourishing food. I want to strengthen it. I want to let it sleep. I want to take it to the doctor when something isn't right. I want to protect my mental health. I want to pay attention when I'm depleted. And I want to nourish my spirit too. Not because doing all of those things makes me a good woman, but because this is the life I've been given. And I want to show up for it. I want to have the ability to enjoy it to its fullest. And that's why boundaries also belong in a conversation about health. I didn't always understand that. I used to think being healthy was mostly about food and exercise. Now, I think sometimes one of the healthiest things I can do is say no. No, I can't take that on right now. No, I'm not available tonight. No, I don't need to explain myself for 20 minutes. Sometimes nourishment looks like a beautiful plate of food. Sometimes nourishment looks like going to bed. Sometimes it looks like turning off your phone. Sometimes it looks like just sitting in nature quietly with God. Sometimes it's coffee with a friend who fills your cup instead of draining it. And sometimes it means creating some distance from something or someone that continually steals your peace. Because we're not only nourishing bodies, we're nourishing our lives. And that brings me back to the woman in your notebook. I want you to look at her again. And this time, don't ask whether you're doing everything she does. Ask something different. I want you to write this down. How does that woman treat herself when she doesn't do something that's the best choice? Because I think that answer might tell us as much about her health as anything else we've written today. Does she make one imperfect choice and decide she's a failure? Or does she say, okay, that happened. What do I do now? What's my next choice? That's the woman I want to become. Not a woman who gets everything right, because I won't. I'm human. But I want to be a woman who knows how to come home to herself when she doesn't get everything right. A woman who can be accountable without being cruel, who can grow without believing she's inadequate or a failure, who can want better for herself without believing she has to become better to be worthy. Because maybe the healthiest version of you isn't the woman who finally gets everything right. It's probably not. Maybe she's the woman who finally understands that she was never required to earn the right to care for herself in the first place. She was already worthy of care, already worthy of nourishment, already worthy of rest and love. Not because of what she's accomplished, but because of who she is. And from that place, we can make very different choices. Not from fear, not from punishment, not because we're desperately trying to fix ourselves, but because we're learning to care well for something precious: the body, the mind, the spirit, the life that we have been given. So let's bring all of this back to food for a minute, because this is Nourish with Regina after all. And I think food is one of the places where the shift we're making and we're talking about becomes really obvious. So for many years, the first question I asked about food was some version of, should I eat this? Or maybe more accurately, am I allowed to eat this? Is it healthy? Is it fattening? How many calories are in it? How many carbs? Is this on my diet? Is this going to ruin what I've been doing? And I don't think I realized how exhausting that is. Every meal became this little negotiation between what I wanted and what I thought I should have, and what I was afraid would happen if I chose wrong. And somewhere along the way, I started asking different questions. Not perfectly. I'm still learning and unlearning things too. But instead of looking at my plate and immediately asking, what do I need to take away? I've started asking, what can I add? And friends, that sounds so simple, but it completely changes the conversation. So maybe you're having oatmeal for breakfast. Old diet thinking might look at that bowl and immediately start calculating how many carbs. Should I even be eating oatmeal? Is this too much? Instead, I want us to look at it and think, okay, how can I make this more nourishing? Maybe I add some Greek yogurt or protein powder, maybe some berries. Maybe I could add chia seeds or walnuts. And suddenly, I haven't taken anything away. I've built something better. Maybe I'm having a sandwich for lunch. I don't have to decide sandwiches are bad. I can ask, what would make this meal work better for me? Maybe I make sure there's a good amount of protein on it. Maybe I add some crunchy vegetables. Maybe I pair it with some fruit. Maybe I realize I haven't had much water today and I fill my glass. That's it. And I think this is where nourishment begins. It begins feeling a lot different than dieting. Dieting so often begins with, what can't I have? What's forbidden? Nourishment begins with, what does my body need? And that's a question I really want you to become comfortable asking, right? Because sometimes the answer isn't even about nutrients. Sometimes the question is, how do I want to feel after I eat this? Not how will I feel about myself? That's a different question. I mean, physically, do I want to feel energized? Do I want to feel satisfied, comfortably full? Do I need something that's going to carry me through a busy afternoon? Am I going to be hungry again in 45 minutes if this is all I eat? That's not judgment. That's information. You're learning your body. You're paying attention. You're becoming more in sync with yourself. And to me, that's health. There's another question I think we need to get more comfortable asking too. And that's, what would actually satisfy me right now? Because sometimes I think we get so focused on choosing the thing that we think we're supposed to eat that we never consider whether it's going to satisfy us. And then what happens? We eat the thing we didn't really want, and then we wander around the kitchen looking for the thing we actually wanted. I've done it probably more than once. Sometimes satisfaction matters. Sometimes enjoyment matters. Food is allowed to taste good. I know, revolutionary nutrition advice. But seriously, I think we've spent so much time moralizing food that we've forgotten food has always been about more than nutrients. Food is nourishment, but food is also culture, tradition, celebration, hospitality, memories, connection. Think about how many important moments in our lives have happened around a table. Christmas dinner, Thanksgiving, a wedding, Sunday brunch. a family recipe that your grandma made, pizza night when all the kids came home, birthday cake. Yes, let's talk about birthday cake because future healthy you eats birthday cake. At least mine does. If I'm sitting at a table celebrating someone I love and somebody brings their favorite cake, I don't want to spend that moment thinking how many calories are in this. I don't want to be calculating how long I need to walk after I eat it to get rid of it. I don't want to tell everybody, "Oh no, I can't. I'm being good." Being good, it's cake. It's not a moral decision. Maybe I want a piece. So I eat a small piece and I enjoy it and I celebrate that person sitting across from me. And then this is the really important part. Nothing happens. I don't need to compensate for it tomorrow. I don't need to skip breakfast the next day. I don't punish myself with a workout because I ate a piece of cake. I don't declare Monday the new beginning of a new diet. I don't say, well, I blew it, so I might as well eat everything in sight for the rest of the weekend. I had cake. It was delicious. I spent time with people I love. The end. And the next day, I will still be hungry and I will eat again. That sounds so ordinary, and that's exactly the point. Because when food loses some of its moral power, we can start making choices from a much calmer place. Now, that doesn't mean future healthy me eats cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because she's learned food freedom. No. And this is where I think sometimes these conversations swing too far in either direction. Nourishment still matters. Nutrition matters, protein matters, fiber matters, vegetables matter, blood sugar matters. The choices we make consistently absolutely influence our health. But there's a tremendous difference between saying, I choose these foods often because they help my body feel and function well, and I have to eat these foods so I can be good. One comes from care and stewardship, and the other comes from fear and punishment. And I want more of my choices to come from care. And maybe that's another question we can ask. Am I making this choice because I care for my body or because I'm afraid of my body? That's a good one. Because fear has driven a lot of women's nutrition choices for a very long time. Fear of gaining weight, fear of carbohydrates, fear of fat, fear of getting older or looking older, fear of losing control. And when we're afraid of food, we spend an awful lot of mental energy thinking about it. What if instead we approach our plates from abundance? Look at everything that we get to give our bodies. Protein that provides amino acids for repair, colorful plants, fiber, healthy fats, carbohydrates that will give us energy to do the things we want to do, vitamins and minerals, food we genuinely enjoy eating, meals that are shared with the people we love. Suddenly, healthy eating isn't in a tiny little box we're trying to desperately stay inside. It gets bigger. It gets more flexible, more human, and much more sustainable. So when you think of the woman you wrote about earlier, I don't want you picturing her eating a perfect diet. I want you to picture her sitting down to a meal, comfortable in her own choices. She understands what helps her body feel good. She's learning what nourishes her. She pays attention. She makes intentional choices most of the time. And then she leaves a little bit of room for life. She's not afraid of the plate in front of her. She's not negotiating her worth over lunch. She's simply asking, what would nourish me right now? And sometimes the answer is salmon and vegetables. Sometimes it's a big, beautiful salad. Sometimes it's eggs and avocado on whole grain toast. Sometimes it's my mom's lasagna, which is amazing, by the way. And sometimes it's a small piece of birthday cake. Because the goal isn't to build a life where you always make perfect food choices. The goal is to build a relationship with food where you know how to make the next nourishing one. And I think that's what healthy women eventually learn. Not how to control food, not how to fear it, not how to be perfect around it. They learn how to trust themselves with it. So before we finish today, I want to take you all the way back to the question I asked you at the very beginning of the episode. Picture a healthy woman. Who do you see now? Does she look any different than the woman you pictured at the start? Or maybe you're not thinking nearly as much about what she looks like anymore. Maybe you're thinking about how she feels, how she moves through her life, how she talks to herself, how she responds when things don't go according to plan. Maybe you're thinking about how she nourishes herself, not only with food, but with rest, relationships, boundaries, prayer, movement, laughter, all of it. And more than anything, I hope when I ask you to picture a healthy woman now, you don't automatically picture someone else. I hope you start seeing a little bit of you. Not a perfect you, not a goal weight you, not some future version of who you finally think is perfect or has everything figured out. You, right now, growing, practicing, learning, becoming. Because when I titled this episode, What Healthy Women Do Differently, I knew I didn't want to give you a list because I don't think there is one. We're all uniquely made. So there's not a one size fits all, right? I don't think there's an ideal morning routine or one diet or one workout or one body type or definition of what a healthy woman is supposed to look like because it looks different for all of us. And after spending time together today, I think maybe healthy women understand something much simpler. Health isn't something you perform. It's something you practice. You practice noticing what your body needs and responding to it. You practice nourishing yourself instead of punishing yourself. You learn when it's time to push yourself a little and when it's time to rest. You get better at protecting your time and your peace. You learn how to make choices that support the life you want to live. And when you don't, because you won't always, neither will I, you practice coming back. Maybe that's what healthy women really do differently. They keep coming back. Not because they never struggle, not because they have more willpower, not because they're somehow better at life. They simply learned that one imperfect choice doesn't require an entirely new beginning. The next choice is still available. So that's the challenge this week. Keep that picture you created of the woman you're becoming somewhere close. And when you come to one of those little ordinary decision points this week, pause and ask yourself, is this the choice the woman I'm becoming would make? And remember what we talked about today. Sometimes the answer might be the workout. Sometimes it's rest. Sometimes it's a nourishing meal. Sometimes it's birthday cake with people you love. Sometimes it's saying yes. And sometimes it's finally saying no. You're not looking for the perfect choice. You're learning to recognize the choice that supports the life you want to build. And every time you do that, you're practicing becoming her. So if this conversation resonated with you today, especially if you did that exercise with me and thought, I can picture the woman I want to become, I just don't know how to get from here to there. That's exactly the kind of work I love doing with my coaching clients. We don't start with everything you're doing wrong. We start with you. We look at your life, your body, your goals, your challenges, the season of life you're in. And then we start figuring out what nourishing yourself well can realistically look like within that life. Because I don't want you to dependent on another diet for the rest of your life. I want you to actually understand your body. Build habits you can actually live with that work in your everyday life and become confident making choices for yourself. And if you'd like some help doing that, you can learn more about my nutrition coaching at www.nourishwithregina.com. And during the week, come find me on Facebook and Instagram at Nourish with Regina. Actually, I'd really love to hear from you after this episode. If you did the exercise today, send me a message and tell me one thing you wrote down. Who is she? How does she feel? What's one choice you're going to practice this week as you become her? I would genuinely love to hear it. And if there's another woman in your life who needs this conversation, especially someone who's been really hard on herself lately, send this episode to her. Maybe she needs the reminder that she doesn't have to become healthier before she's worthy of caring for herself. She can care for herself because she's already worthy of that care. And then come back next Tuesday because we're going to take what we talked about today and make it even more practical. Next week's episode is called the Back to Routine Blueprint because we're heading into that time of year when summer starts winding down. Schedules start filling back up. The kids are back to school. Activities begin again. And suddenly everybody starts saying, okay, I need to get back on track. But I don't want you going back. I don't want September to become another January where we decide we're going to completely overhaul our lives on Monday morning. Instead, we're going to talk about how to build a routine that actually supports the life you're living now. How do we get meals planned again without spending all Sunday meal prepping? How do we get movement back in a busy schedule? How do we protect sleep when the calendar starts getting crazy? And most importantly, how do we create routines that support the woman we just spent this entire episode talking about? So instead of creating another impossible standard for her to live up to, we're going to figure it out together. And that's what we're talking about next Tuesday on the Back to Routine Blueprint. And I think it's going to be the perfect next step from today's conversation. But until then, put away the measuring stick. Stop trying to become somebody else's version of healthy and keep practicing becoming the woman you were created to be. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you so much. And as always, keep nourishing your body one simple choice at a time.